Hello class, we're going to have a discussion on body fluid compartments. This lecture is very critical to understand in order to move through the rest of the semester. It really does lay a very good foundation to build upon as we move through the next 16 weeks. We are going to cover quite a bit for such a short PowerPoint. I'm first going to explain this idea of body fluid compartments and where we find most of our water. Then we're going to compare and contrast these different compartments. And then we need to understand the idea of how these body fluid compartments can change and why. And how does water move? There are two reasons why water moves, two mechanisms in which it moves. And then towards the very, very end, we will have a math and metric system review, an osmolality review. And I will probably do that in class with you all so that you can see what I'm writing on the board. Water, most of our body mass is water. Roughly 60% of our body mass is water. There is a wide range or set point for the amount of water in our body. This depends on your size, of course, whether you're male or female, but roughly 60%. If you were to take your body weight and divide it by 2.2, you would convert your pounds into mass, and you would convert your pounds into kilograms. Then if you take your kilograms as shown here and multiply it by 0.6 for 60%, you can actually figure out how many kilograms of your body mass is in water. And for every kilogram of water, that equates to 1 liter of water volume. So how much of your own weight is water mass? Well, again, divide your pounds by 2.2 and you can convert yourself to kilograms and then multiply by 0.6 to get a rough estimate of how much your body mass is in water. Excuse me. This water is found in two different compartments. So here we go, beginning our body fluid compartments. It's either found inside cells or outside cells. You are about 100 trillion cells big today. And it stands to reason, since you have so many cells, that most of your water is found within cells. So the intracellular fluid compartment, as shown here, is the largest of all the compartments. Everywhere else outside of the cells is considered extracellular. And that extracellular compartment can be further divided into smaller compartments, shown here. So again, out of the 60% of your body mass that's found, that is water, about 2/3 of that is found inside the cells, about 40%. So 2/3 of your 60% mass is found inside the cells. Outside of the cells, it's called extracellular fluid. The next, this can be further subdivided into 3 smaller compartments. Interstitial fluid is the water around the cells, between the cells, around. And then we also have plasma fluid, which is water that's found within blood vessels, but not in the actual blood cells. That would be intracellular fluid. And then we see transcellular fluid, which is the water that is found in chambers that are lined by epithelial lining. For example, your synovial joints. You can even think of transcellular fluid as the peritoneal fluid that's found in your peritoneal cavity. So let's do a little exercise on this. Here we see in the picture the lumen of the stomach. This is where the soda that you just drank or the water that you just drank would be found, the hamburger you just ate. The stomach is lined by epithelial cells, simple columnar cells to be specific. Then we see a blood vessel here going through the submucosa of your stomach, and found within the blood vessel is a red blood cell. So here, I'm asking you what fluid is found inside this endothelial cell that makes up a blood vessel? What fluid is found inside this cell? Well, the answer is intracellular fluid. I asked you, what is the fluid called inside a cell? It's intracellular. Well, what about this fluid found within a red blood cell? Again, it's fluid inside a cell, so it has to be intracellular fluid. What about the fluid found within the blood vessel, but around the red blood cell shown here? Well, that's plasma. Clearly, it's extracellular. It's outside of a cell, but it's found within a blood vessel, bathing the formed elements, so it has to be plasma. What about the fluid that would be found here between these epithelial cells and the endothelial cells of the blood vessel? Well, that's interstitial fluid. And what about the fluid that you just consumed? Well, clearly it's lined by epithelial lining, so that would be transcellular. Even though that is a fluid that, in this case, in your stomach, it would be transient, right? You're going to absorb that liquid. It's there only for a moment until it's absorbed, but it's still an example of transcellular fluid. Again, there are many other examples, like peritoneal fluid in your peritoneal cavity, or pleural fluid found in your pleural cavities, and the fluid found in your synovial membranes. Again, intracellular, about 2/3 of your body mass, fluid found inside the cells. Extracellular fluid, about 1/3. The biggest extracellular compartment is interstitial, followed by plasma, followed by transcellular fluid. Now, what did you hear from that last slide? Your body fluid compartments are different volumes, different sizes. Well, another way that they're different is what they're made of, their compositions, what we find dissolved in them. The extracellular fluid has more sodium. The intracellular fluid has more potassium. So we can find different stuffs, different things dissolved in them. Plasma has a high abundance of albumin, and we don't really see that in the other body fluid compartments. So we have different compositions, what we find dissolved in them, and different volumes in these fluids. But the number one way they have to be the same, is the total number of particles that we find dissolved in them. Number of particles. So if I were to tally every solute, everything that's dissolved in intracellular fluid, just add it up and divide that total number of particles by the volume of that compartment. Then if I were to add up all the particles in, say, the plasma, and divide that number by the volume of plasma, I should get the same number for both of those division problems. So we have to have the same number of particles per unit volume. The concentrations, if you will, have to be the same. And this way of describing concentration, there are many ways to describe concentration. This way is called osmolality. The magic number that all of our body fluid compartments has to be at is roughly 300 milliosmolau. It's really closer to 280, but we round up for an easy number to remember. 300 milliosmolau. The number of particles per unit volume has to be the same. So we have different volumes, different compositions, you heard me say, but the number of particles per unit of volume has to be the same. Well, how do we get different things, solutes, dissolved in either extracellular fluid or intracellular fluid? We have sidedness of the cell membrane, and this really comes down to membrane transport. The cell membranes are selectively permeable. They allow some things to move easier than others. And we also have pumps that push solutes on one side of the cell membrane versus the other. And right now, I just want you to know that we find sodium mostly outside the cell, potassium mostly inside the cell, calcium is mostly found outside the cell, but don't be misled by this. There is actually a lot of calcium found inside a cell. It's just not free. So these numbers here are showing you free calcium. And we'll talk about this calcium issue in more detail as we get to Unit 2. And then down here, I want you to know that the proteins are found more abundantly inside the cell, so intracellular fluid. But we can have body fluid compartments that are rich in proteins, like plasma, which is very rich in albumin. Again, how do we get this sidedness across the cell membrane? It comes down to membrane transport, and you've had this since back in elementary school, and then again in high school, and then again in a general bio class in college. We're talking about diffusion, simple diffusion, where solutes can go across the cell membrane from high concentration down to low because they have permeability and this gradient that drives them from high to low. We can have facilitated diffusion, where a protein integrated in the cell membrane physically moves a solute from high concentration to low. It is still a type of of passive diffusion, passive transport, but it requires a protein to facilitate this. And this is in striking contrast with active transport, where we might have solutes move from low to high instead of from high to low. And we'll cover all of these types of transports as we go through Unit 2. We're going to review them all over again.